This episode is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. Become a patron today at patreon.com/intotheportal.
Hello, and welcome back into the portal. I'm Amber Ray.
And I'm Andrew McKay. And welcome back, everyone, to another Film Friday episode.
Yes.
Stoked on this movie.
Yes, we're really excited. We're continuing on with our horror theme.
Yes.
And we have got The Ritual.
The Ritual.
On topic today.
Yeah, this was, we came across it ourselves on Netflix, but it was suggested by quite a few other people, too.
Yes.
I didn't know what to expect from this movie, just looking at the, the poster and watching the trailer. I wasn't quite sure what to get out of it. I freaking loved it.
Yes.
So we're going to get into that movie tonight.
We really did. First of all, though, before we dive into that, just wanted to say thank you for everyone's feedback.
Definitely.
It's been amazing. Very positive.
People seem to like movies.
That's obvious. People seem to they seem to like us doing movies.
Yeah, which is really positive.
It's really cool because, honestly, this is just a natural progression, right, from everything that we've sort of started off with in the show. Mm-hmm. So we're really excited just to add this on as another totally. Factor.
It's always tied, whenever we watch films, they inspire the regular show, but it's also there's always things that come up where hey, that's something from the homunculus episode way back, or
totally.
Hey, that's from that, or whatever. So there's always so much overlap. It's fun. It's great.
It's really cool.
Yeah. This may sound a little echoey to you guys because we are once again outside of our regular podcast nest,
yes.
out in the Kootenays of British Columbia, but a little echoey room. But hopefully the sound's still okay.
Yeah, back in the cabin.
Back at the cabin. Life's tough.
So tough.
So, where did you want to start off with discussing this film?
Definitely wanted to give the rundown. So this film was actually produced in 2017, released.
Super new.
The director was David Bruckner. Screenplay was by Joe Barton. Good on you, Joe.
Yeah.
You did good.
You did good.
Yeah, so basic plot rundown. It's very simple, and honestly, the more simple... Well, actually, no, I'm not going to say that. I was going to say the simpler the better, but sometimes I really like the complicated little bits.
Totally.
But anyways, yeah, basic plot outline. 5 old friends from university meet up, go out for drinks one night at a pub or catching up, all this stuff. Things go terribly awry when the main character ends up entering a convenience store with Rob. So Rob becomes a pivotal factor in this film. He's basically the linchpin for everything that follows, right?
Pretty much.
And essentially what happens is he's violently assaulted and ends up dying right in front of his friend, Luke,
right,
who ends up being ridden with guilt the entire rest of the movie.
And we'll talk about that because we both have thoughts on that.
Exactly.
But,
and a huge, obviously... turning point for the film as well, as far as the action goes, is the discussion that night, because they're all talking about going on a trip together.
Right, for Robert's stag, by all accounts, or something along those lines is what it seemed like.
Oh, no, he was already married, man.
Okay, or was it really?
Stag, that's why he gets murdered.
But he called it a lad's night. He's like, I'm not going to plan a lad's night and have a brunch. Maybe it was just a fun get together and they just called it a lad's night. I've just heard people from the UK call a lad's night almost like a stag, plan a boys. I don't even know. A
stag doesn't necessarily mean someone's getting married. You can have a stag night where it's just ladies' night.
I guess
stag night, ladies' night, whatever.
I haven't been so privileged. So
and so the film ends up following the 4 remaining friends along their journey in remembrance of Rob, and they end up journeying to this particular Scandinavian mountain range.
Between Sweden and Norway.
Exactly. He wanted to go there to kind of test himself. He was wanting adventure, this Rob character, mm-hmm. and so to remember his name and his honor, they end up going there, even though not all members of the group want to.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting juxtaposition, hey?
Yeah, and I really liked how they jumped right into that. So it wasn't a million hours of character development, even though that can be important depending on what type of film it is. But I felt they jumped right in first scene. They're sitting at the pub. Then it got right into like the serious, stuff that happens with Robert being murdered. And then next thing they're on the trip. And it's like this really quick evolution. I feel like for some people that might throw them off, but I liked that.
And the way it was shown, the scenes themselves did a really good job, and obviously the actors did a really good job of conveying their character early on. I feel like that was structured really well, and you get the essence of each character almost instantly. There are a few that are weaker, I would say, in the crew, but I feel like everyone is mostly necessary to the film.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I thought that was very effective because you get, a lot of action. You get, the scene is established. Obviously, they're all having a great time. They're all friends. You can see the camaraderie. And they do a good job of that. And then they do a good job of the opposite, right? When things start to turn. Yeah, definitely. And human drama inevitably gets in the way. But yeah, so essentially, okay. What was something that you loved about this film?
Okay. I mean... that's a juicy, loaded question.
It is. Sorry.
Okay, like I just said, like I really liked how this film didn't dick around. They jumped right into, you were invested in it right away. There wasn't like a half an hour of like this, preamble build up. Oh, they're hiking. Oh, they make it through their first night and everything's fine and they're still not, whatever. I just loved how all of a sudden it's 10 minutes into the movie and then they're making the decision after the character Dom sprains his knee. There's always got to be a weak link in these movies, right? And they have to, well, they don't have to. They make that choice to divert their path and go into the woods. I loved how that happened right away. Like we're right off the bat, we're into this and we're like, this is going somewhere not so good. You know what I mean? Like
definitely.
And then they start to enter the woods and the expressions on Luke's face, he is skeptical of it right from the beginning. It's almost like he knew something terrible was going to happen.
That scene, the one where he exactly, like, him, Luke, and Hutch or Hodge, however you want to pronounce that, they kind of walk away from the other two, right? And Hodge kind of makes a comment. He's like, we're going to cut through the woods. Right. As if he's already made the decision. And then Luke looks at the woods. And honestly, that shot was so effective. It honestly, the trees look like they're gazing back at the viewer as if they're alive, as if they're like breathing or anticipating something, you know?
Yeah.
And so I thought that worked really well. I really enjoyed the cinematography. I thought the way that the mountains were shot, everything down to even the blades of grass blowing in the constant breeze. It's like these it
was gorgeous landscape that they
desolate but beautiful. And as soon as they enter those woods, you almost feel, because we haven't even got to the creature yet, but you almost feel the essence of that monster in the trees themselves. There's several shots, like there's one in particular that I'm picturing in my head where they've entered the woods. It's the first day. They haven't even spent a night in the woods yet. Right. And all you see is trees at first, and they're bare. It's like bare wood with like tons of like dead twigs poking out. So all you see is wood. There's no foliage. There's no nothing.
No.
And then you get like, it's almost like an optical illusion where you're not sure how far of a distance it is because they're so far back. And they're so close together, the trees, that it's like, it's suffocating. And then you get this glimmer of a darkness, and you honestly, like, I thought it was the creature, and then it ends up just being the hikers walking slowly towards the camera.
And then they actually end up, having gone back and watched it a second time, that exact shot that you're describing right there comes up a few other times throughout the film. So there's like, when you first get a tiny little snippet of the creature, that's that same shot where it's like
through the trees from a distance.
And they trick you, like you just said. So like that first one, they trick you. It's like, you think you're going to see something, but then it's just them coming towards more of the nothingness that they'll never escape from, you know what I mean?
The impending
And of
doom.
course they make that comment right when they enter the woods where it's like, it's really quiet in here. And anyone who's like gone hiking like knows obviously the woods is really quiet. The trees muffle sound, but the trees that they were walking amongst didn't have foliage on them, like low down.
No.
And there was not an animal in sight. No birds, no squirrels, no bugs, no nothing.
Yeah. No chirp, no little snap of a twig from a deer nearby or anything. So
that's super duper ominous.
Very ominous.
I think the other point I should make too, like just in terms of, I mean, we'll come back, I guess, to like favorite things about the movie, but the fact that we had no idea first time around watching this And of course, you guys already all know, spoilers abound. This is for people who have seen the movie. We, of course, didn't know that it was a creature. Like, I went into this movie expecting it to be witchcraft, occult. They wander into something where they're taken into like a coven and sacrificed or something.
Yeah.
This movie threw me off with that, which was great.
But isn't the creature actually depicted on
that's just
the film?
Not on the Netflix, like on the film poster or whatever you want to call it on Netflix. It's just them. It's just the like a shot of them walking into the woods.
Okay.
And then the title, The Ritual, just implies like occult magic. You know what I mean? Like that you'll be sacrificed for something.
Exactly. And they do really set it up that way in the beginning with the symbols on the trees. And then as soon as they enter that first cabin, seeking shelter from the rainstorm, and they come across, that Phil comes across initially, that like straw like idol thing.
Yeah.
And immediately he doesn't even hesitate. He's just like, that's witchcraft.
He's just staring at it like, that's witchcraft. And they're like, what? Like, that's witchcraft. And it's like, the second anyone decides that what they see is witchcraft, that's time to, I don't care if it's raining and pitch black, you head back the way you came. You get a rope, you all hold on to that rope so you can't get separated, and you hike back out the way you came.
I know, hey?
You do not stay the night in that house.
Well, even Luke, by the time they get settled in the cabin and they're all like around their little fire or whatever, he's like, so you guys, let's just go back the way we came tomorrow. But honestly, at this point, it's too late for them, hey? I feel like they've already been ensnared, so to speak.
I feel like if they would have left that night, then maybe they could have been warned off and made it back out. I mean, obviously this is a movie, but it's like, I feel like they were almost given a chance.
Well, I honestly think they were doomed from the time they saw that dead buck in the tree.
So of course that's the first thing they see, and everyone watching who's watched will know, right? Like they come into the woods very quickly, entering. They find the elk that's been disemboweled, strung up in the tree, and they're speculating like, Can bears do that? It's
this
like,
the part of the nature documentary
once you're
they
asking
don't
yourself
show you?
if bears can lift a fully grown elk 25 feet up in a tree, then it's time to turn around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny too because there's another interesting scene I found that was it was almost as if they were trying to make light of their situation. It wasn't dire by any point by this point because they had literally just entered the woods and they all gather around for a selfie. And they take the photo. That's right before they find the buck too.
Right.
And it's almost like that's the last snapshot. Like, obviously no one will ever find that camera, probably.
Oh, well, the next victims might come across
the next victims, exactly like how they did, right? With the tent and the driver's license and even the VW van they find. Like, that for me was the first red flag.
The VW
why is
van.
there... Yeah, why is that there?
The abandoned.
Yeah, it's
sweet
very
find,
haunting imagery.
American Pickers would have been stoked to find that.
Oh, they would have been just all over that.
I don't know how you're going to get it home from remote Swedish mountains, but you know. But okay, if I could ask you then, going back to this, it's like at what point along them entering into the woods and, you know, clearly getting into a sticky situation here, did you become the most like disturbed, I guess, or where you were like, okay, here's the turning point after they see that elk, I guess? I mean, obviously it's the nightmares in the house.
But
like
nightmares?
to you, what scared you? Like what got you your heart jumping earliest?
Oof. Well, you know, obviously you kind of get a bit of a scare seeing that buck, but for me it was that scene in the first night in the cabin when he wakes up and all you see is a blinding light emanating from outside, and it didn't like scare me like you know, like jumping on my bones, but it's eerie, right? And so that's what this movie was really good at doing. It was good at making you feel unsettled and just feel like you got goose pimples the entire time because of the music mostly. I feel like the score and just like the soundtrack was just...
It was good.
Brilliant. It had that mix of like the low horns and then it had the drum beat that was really low too in the back, the steady drum rhythm. And that to me was the most effective in building that sense of terror or even building a sense of impending doom, because I feel like after Hodge or Hutch or whatever his name is, he gets offed that's kind of the point where I feel like everyone lost hope. And especially Phil. Like, there's that one scene where he, like, falls down. They're trying to climb up a ridge. The three remaining survivors. Right. And then he ends up falling down. And then he just, like, honestly, he kind of just gives up and closes his eyes. And then there's this scene where this moment where he feel the creature came for him is what he thought. And then it's just Luke
touching him on the shoulder.
Yeah, and he's just like, the look on his face though was just like, just let it be over.
Just like constant panic.
Exactly. Dread, like they're at the point of exhaustion by that point in the film. But getting back to what you were asking me though, like, yeah, like what was most effective, what terrified me the most was that first scene. The first night when everyone wakes up. There is a really quick transition that's employed at multiple times in the movie between transitioning between night and day or day to night, where it happens almost instantly.
Right.
And that was one of those scenes, right, where it's pitch black and he ends up getting sucked into his own delusion, right, of his own nightmare,
right.
Which was super effective too. I thought they did a really good job, especially the fluorescent lights, how it was kind of
flickering and
exactly.
Just like really,
yeah, very ominous there.
And
but
you know what I loved about that part too? It's like, yeah, he there's the blinding light. He walks out the front door. He's in the convenience store again, right? But then when the hallucination or the whatever is done and the creature is finished with messing with them for that moment, and the shelving of what he's seen just like gets sucked into like a black hole in front of him, and then he's like, and then it's almost like he wasn't breathing that whole time. So it's like he has this huge gasp when that happens. So it's like his whole world that he sees in front of him gets sucked into that black hole, and then he's like, like as if he hadn't been breathing for the entire nightmare. And then he looks down and he's got like the blood slowly forming on his shirt from the mark.
That's interesting too, the way that you describe that as it almost being sucked into a black hole. Because for me, what I was kind of thinking was it gets the vision or the delusion gets sucked away with the creature exiting. And you even get that tiny rustle of the branch as he opens his eyes and realizes he's looking at the forest.
Oh, there's the rustle of the branch and several trees snapped in half, like where clearly a freaking 40-foot tall monstrosity just left in a split second.
Yeah. But it's just gone.
Gone. Terrifying.
I'm just looking. Just like,
yeah. Could you imagine if that happened to you?
We're in a heavily wooded area right now, and I'm like kind of
we're staying
freaking out
inside
now.
Tonight. That's for sure.
But inside isn't safe either.
I tweeted this right after we watched this movie a little while back too. The first time I was like, look, if you're hiking anywhere, like whether you believe in mythical ancient gods or not, like bring more than just a walking stick with you, people. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, seriously. Like if you can, depending on what state you're in or whatever. Like I get it. I'm not going to remote Sweden without excessive weaponry.
None of them seem to have anything on them. I think there's one like hatchet or one knife.
Of course, they're not expecting to run into this.
But still, man, there's bears in Scandinavia. There's all sorts of crazy stuff. Well, who knows what you're gonna run into? Just
stuck to the path, right?
There's bugs.
So I have to say that I would agree with you. Like the tone of the film is really set with that first night. And it's like, there's a sense of basically, I feel like the sense of hopelessness was right after that night. Because Luke can kind of tell the second they make the decision that they're not going to retrace their steps and go back the way they came, that the look on his face is like, he's not sure if they're going to make it back.
And then Dom Dom dooms them all.
Pretty much.
By being an idiot and saying, oh, path of civilization. Civilization's good. We're going that way. It's like, buddy. It's like,
dude, you were just in a house. That's an indication of civilization. And that was not a good night.
No.
Terrible night.
Exactly.
And of course, you're given that that vibe from Hutch or Hodge, too. Because he's the leader. He's the one who knows. He's obviously been hiking before and things like this, right? He's kind of like running the show.
Yeah.
And he's cracking jokes like
trying to
the night before, being like, oh, like, you know, maybe someone's going to get like laid tonight or whatever. Like make some joke like that. But then he kind of like looks to the side and the only one who's watching him is Luke. And Luke is the only one who knows that what he's saying is basically total.
Yeah.
He's trying to be positive, but he's not that confident.
So that's an interesting point too, right? As far as characters go and character development, I feel like there's a clear divide between Luke and the group, and then there's also a divide between Luke and Hodge, and then the two others, right? The weaklings, you can kind of describe them as. They're always visually weaker. They're always trailing behind. And I don't want to say like too much about Phil, but to be honest, Phil was kind of the most useless character. The only thing that he's good for is he obviously, anyone could have found the idol thing originally. That doesn't matter. But then he's the one that questions it. It's like, excuse me, guys, are we going to talk about this? Because some weird shit just happened.
Yeah.
And yeah, so like I found his character to be effective for that. But I thought there was going to be more development with Phil. And I was kind of thinking that he was going to be marked by the beast or by the dark magic, and maybe could have become a demon himself, was kind of what I was thinking, because he looked so ashen. He looked so, he almost looked sick the next day. And I was just like thinking to myself, like, oh, he's going to be the first one down. Like, he's going to do some crazy shit. But no, he ended up just...
How awesome was that scene, though, when they're like, where's Phil? Where's Phil? And then they hear that kind of like creaking of the floorboards upstairs, and they're like, they rush up to see him, and he's holding his wrist. When I first saw that scene, I thought he might have like cut his, like he might have like killed him, like was committing suicide. He was holding his wrist and like praying to the thing, and it looked almost like he had slit his wrists, which would have been pretty intense.
He was holding his wrist.
He was like kneeling down like this, like doing this very weird kind of like half holding his wrist and his hand up in the air like this. And Luke's just like, what you doing, Phil? What you doing, mate? Like,
he's completely naked too.
Yeah.
So
he's like, how else would you respond to that? Be like, he doesn't want to touch him either. He's just kind of in the doorway, like, Phil,
he's shining the light.
What you doing? Like,
yeah. And then he wakes up and he's like, what am I doing?
I don't know. I don't know. He's like, what's going on? Luke's just like, I have no explanation for you. Like, I don't know.
The one thing I would have really appreciated was more visuals from the nightmares of the others. Like, I know he was focusing on Luke for specific reasons, but it would have been nice to know, because I thought it was a tad ambiguous. Like, you brought up the fact that you thought maybe Dom's dream was actually a vision of what was to come later for him, as far as Gail, his wife, and how he was screaming out. For me, I initially interpreted that as he was screaming out Gail because his worst nightmare would be either A, Gail leaving him, or B, something terrible happening to Gail. And I didn't really put two and two together, but I thought that was a really unique interpretation that you had, where it was like essentially like, oh no, like he was reliving exactly what was going to happen to him. It was like a premonition.
Yeah, like I called it, and then it ended up being the thing. I was pretty happy with myself with that. Because then he's sitting there, and of course that's what he says to Luke, right? He's like, I never told you about my dream. Yeah. Whatever. And we're jumping all over the place for this movie, but of course you guys have seen it. If you have Netflix, of course. I mean, I hope you guys have seen it.
We're not really good at chronology.
Well, I mean, when people have already watched the film, it's kind of cool to jump back and forth, and we're talking just about all of it.
Definitely.
But, yeah, I guess, okay, there's a few other, okay, you go ahead, because there's a few elements I want to get into, but I know there's other stuff we want to cover first.
If you got something popping in your mind, I was just going to go through, like, kind of a chronology, right? So, okay, we've discussed them at the bar, we've discussed the scene where Rob dies, we've discussed those sort of transitions leading up to all the way up to the morning after the night in the cabin.
Right.
Is kind of where we got to. And we did mention the fact that Hodge dies, because he dies pretty fast after that. It was a quick moving movie.
That was, and that was an intense scene too, right? So they take that path that Dom decides is just whatever, this is our only option, let's just head down this, hopefully we'll find some civilization. That's got to be the most disheartening thing in the world, when you get to the end of that next day, and they're literally like, I can't remember which character says it. It's either Dom or Phil, when they look up and they're like, it's starting to get dark again. Like, and they know, like, what? We're not making it to the lodge again tonight. No. And Phil is just choked. Like, the look in his face, and he just, like, throws down his, like, hat or jacket or whatever he had on, and he's just like, you guys are spending another night in the woods, and you have no idea where you are.
No idea. And you're even further away from where you said you were registered and where you said you were going to be hiking. So no one's going to be looking for you in that area. Not
to mention that the locals presumably would have some knowledge of not going in, how you should never go in that woods.
Exactly.
You'd think.
They'd have, exactly. And added to that is the sense of doom that comes about from the fact that all day they were not traveling in the direction that they were supposed to be traveling. They were just trying to follow the stupid path.
Right.
The path that ultimately leads them to a civilization that they don't want to be a part of.
No,
So,
definitely not.
Be careful.
And of course, this is the part, I mean, well, just before the scene where they kind of go down for the night when they end up losing Hutch is when you have this confrontation between Dom and Luke.
Yeah.
Where basically it all, you could see
All
it,
the
you could see the
drama.
writing on the wall from the very beginning.
Exactly.
Where basically Dom feels that Luke is the one responsible for Robert's death.
Exactly. He thought he was a coward.
And I've got a bone to pick with that. And I said that when we were watching the movie. And I'm like, I'm not saying like don't defend your friends if they're in danger and like things like that. But I just feel like obviously that is such a dick thing to believe about your friend. Like
it is
like
yeah.
a friend of yours witnessed another friend from the group mercilessly slaughtered by two armed men, one with a machete, the other with a baseball bat, and you are going to criticize that friend for not basically being Captain America and
well,
saving the day.
That's
you know what I
one
mean?
way
It's
to
like
look at it too, but there's the other where if you really want to get into it, because he even says right out, he's like, I do not value your opinion, Luke. I do not care what you think.
Right.
So you could even interpret that as like an even more deep-seated disrespect where he ultimately believes that Luke has never grown up, and that is obviously evident after they leave the pub and Luke wants to continue the night by buying more booze and no one else wants to really join him.
Right.
And he ends up going through his friends, be like, hey, you coming? You coming? You coming? He looks at Rob and Rob's like, all right, let's go.
Right.
And so Rob is down. And so ultimately maybe
He's blaming him because of
Dom would blame him because he's like, you should never have gone in there in the first place. Should never have been there. Should never have happened. But at the same time, it's like, excuse me, like you said it before too. A wedding ring or the rest of your life?
Yeah.
Like the wedding ring is a symbol of the rest of your life with that person.
You're an idiot.
You can buy another ring.
I'm
you
sorry.
cannot buy
I'm
another
sorry.
life.
If you've got somebody threatening to cut your face with a machete over a wedding ring and you refuse, you deserve to get your face cut with a machete. I'm sorry. Because that is really stupid.
It's really vain.
That is really, really, really stupid.
It's stupidly sentimental.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's a ring. Would you rather be alive or would you rather have a ring? It's very simple. It's very simple.
Would you rather see your wife again or would you rather her bury you with the ring on? Even though they do take the ring in the end, I think.
Anyway, so I was a little bit rubbed the wrong way by Dom.
Right.
Because,
so that whole antagonism there, that's kind of a...
It's like
grinds your gears, man.
But
the whole
obviously
movie,
it works really well for the plot line.
It does.
Obviously, right? Because it tees up Luke to redeem himself, which... You could argue he does or to try to redeem himself, right? And Hutch is teeing him up for that the whole way along, right? Like the night before Hutch gets
Hodge, I think it is.
Hodge,
I think it's
Hodge,
Hodge. I don't know.
The night before he gets dragged into the woods by the thing, he goes over to Luke and is like, you know, you're the strongest. I think tomorrow you should probably try to go southwest, just get back, get some help, and then come back. And you can see the look on Luke's face where he's just like, yeah, this is a handout. Mm-hmm. Like I'm the one who needs to save the day. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's like, it was almost.
But then they immediately they're like, we're all staying in the woods here by ourselves. Like, screw that.
Yeah. And then of course you get that same vision again from Luke with the convenience store. And then this is what this is what was really effective to me about the film too, is they're always separated before they realize what horrible things have gone on. So the same thing happened in the scene in the cabin. Luke has been drawn out into the woods. He sees the blood on his shirt, and then all of a sudden he just hears these just horrible screams coming from the cabin. He rushes back in to see what's up, and it was the same thing on their second night in the woods. He wakes back up again. He's like, what's going on? Next thing you know, like Phil, like the cries from Phil, it's just like that's gut-wrenchingly like
they did
horrible.
A really effective. The acting was superb. I thought they did a really, really effective job of portraying a group of long lost friends, so to speak, you know, that have kind of gone their separate ways, and now they're reunited, and there's definitely a lot of tension, right?
Yeah.
Tension all over. And the overriding one is obviously between Dom and Luke. It's a little bit more ambiguous what Phil thinks of the whole situation, but I feel like he secretly sides with Dom.
I think so.
Yeah, and then there is moments where it's almost as if, because like Hodge is the one that tells Dom to shut up, because he's like, just no. But at the same time, it's almost as if he's like, he's been privy to those conversations too.
Oh, of course.
So it's kind of like this really awkward, like, whatever, and they're all just there for Rob, and Rob's not there. It's like, God, Rob, why? Like, But anyways, I think we should talk about the creature.
I think I was just going to say the same thing because this is obviously the most important part of the movie.
Yeah.
And like I said, I was kind of tricked the first time. I thought it was going to be like witchcraft occult. And then it ends up being... Well, it
is though.
It sort of is.
Because you get those weird like voodoo-esque doll things in the upper reaches of the society, and they're alive.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just get to that. So
yeah.
So they're all dead now. Phil's been dragged away. The only two left are Dom and Luke, and they find their way.
They just fall right into the trap.
Right. They fall. They end up trying to escape the creature, and they end up on a path that's lit with flame.
Just following the breadcrumbs.
Following the breadcrumbs. Now, I gotta say, it's very interesting where the story goes from here, where they're taken prisoner. Clearly, they think they're both going to be sacrificed, where it ends up just being Dom is the one who's going to be sacrificed. Mm-hmm. But it's just like...
He's marked
out. The idea of it is a cult, because it's like this select,
Once you're
this
in,
select
you can't
group.
leave.
Yeah, this select group in the middle of the woods. Mm-hmm. But the comment that the one girl makes who can speak English, where she's like, we finally get an idea of what the heck this thing is, and it's like, it's a god ancient, one of the Jotun. Mm-hmm. But she says that it allows them to live beyond normal life. Mm-hmm. So that's
with no pain.
That's an interesting kind of paranormal aspect to this, right? It's like, it's this ancient god, but then they're living in this microcosm of the woods where it's like, how old are these people? Are they hundreds of years old?
Exactly. You don't know. Are they timeless? Another thing too that was kind of interesting, because ultimately Luke is singled out. He's chosen to become one. He's chosen by the creature, right? I feel like that wound he gets the first night is that the mark of the beast, which means that he is spared.
Right.
Because I feel like there's several opportunities where the creature could have taken him and slaughtered him too, but just didn't.
Right.
And it makes me wonder though, like how these people ended up here, because if Phil is like hypothetically going to be inducted into this cult, like where did everyone else come from? Were they singled out too from past, like, hiking experiences or family vacations, camping, that type of thing?
Well, that's just it. It's like, and she makes that comment. It's like, you have no idea. Yeah, past hiking expeditions when? Freaking 1,000 years ago? Like before.
Like what about the VW van and the family of the tent that they find? Like did one of them make it into the group too? You know what I mean? Like, is there one from every group?
Well, that's another question too, right? It's like, what is why was Luke selected? And the only reason that I could come up with this is because he was living with this guilt that was very perceptible to evil. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's why his vision was of the convenience store over and over and over again. It was like, it was drawn to him because of his darkness and the way, and his, the pit of despair that he was living in while they were on that trip, right? Like feeling so guilty and knowing that all the people around you are blaming you essentially.
And maybe perhaps it kind of would hone in on that and think that maybe he doesn't want to go back to society. Maybe he's more open to an alternative.
An alternative of worshiping a god.
Okay, the idea that these people rely on sacrificial offerings to this monster in order to maintain their mode of life. How many times a year do people actually stumble into these woods? It seems like there's a lot going on. Wouldn't they take a group like this group where there's 4 people?
Keep them
all.
They
know exactly, right? Corral them. Keep them like cattle until you can
sacrifice them later. Save it for later. No, totally.
Inevitably, like the beast got to a few of them first, but it's like you would think they'd have more outposts. There'd be more people out scouting in the woods, like looking for people.
It's funny. It's almost like it didn't even seem to be like a thing where you could, do that though, because it wasn't even really a sacrifice when you think about it. It's like, so Dom's there, and all of a sudden his dream that he described to Luke is coming to a head again, because Luke can hear him yelling, Gale, 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 so he knows, crap.
It's another hallucination.
Here's the time, right? But all the creature does, and this is so awesome, my favorite part of the movie, because you actually get to see the beast, and I love how they save it all the way till the end, right?
They do.
Don't, which is so cool. But it doesn't, it's not like it eats them or anything, right?
No.
It doesn't rip them in half. It doesn't like drink the blood. It doesn't just take the head, or
it doesn't even disembowel him.
It just picks him up, and it's almost like it is gaining sustenance off of his sheer terror. It's like those creepy hands wrapped around his head as it's holding him up by the head.
And it's got the eyes, right? The eyes become visible. It's these glowing yellow
look on
eyes.
His face is on Dom's face is just awesome. And then of course it just spears him onto a branch.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's just a trophy in the trees.
It is. And they even just say, like, we don't remove the bodies. They just stay there. We don't even see any other bodies. So, like, are there, like, hundreds of these bodies in the trees? Like, what's going
presumably.
on there?
Well, you could see a couple of them. Like, Dom's on the cross-like thing or whatever. And he looks up and you can see these faint kind of objects in the trees of some of the bodies, but not like hundreds of them, right? But like the bodies. And then the girl makes the comment that like we don't remove the bodies from the trees, they don't or whatever.
Touch them.
Yeah.
So now we're at the point where basically Luke is by himself. He decides he's going to escape. He ends up breaking his thumb in order to get out of the ropes. Yeah. And he one of my favorite parts, and your favorite parts too, is when he punches that stupid lady.
Oh yeah. She comes back around the corner, this old lady just gets
it's just like this moment where he's just like
yeah.
Boom.
Yeah. It's like, what else do you do in that situation? Oh, man. I mean, I don't want anyone to take this the wrong way, but it's like, there's something that would be so satisfying about that. It's not like I sit around craving about punching old ladies in the face or anything, but it's like in that scenario, man, would that feel good? You just wind up and just boom.
She's just down.
Yeah. That's the last you see from her the whole movie.
No, actually, that you do see her again.
You do?
Yeah, you do. Okay. She ends up getting picked up. No, she ends up getting picked up by the creature, and he has her. It almost looks like tusks, but it's actually hands. It looks like a huge, gigantic, bony, like crazy mammoth thing, almost from a distance. Sort of
from a distance,
but then it's obviously more caribou-like.
I love how we keep calling it he.
I don't know. And I thought it was really effing creepy how essentially that idol that they found, it is the top. It's almost as if a human body is inserted where the head of an elk should be without the head of the human. And instead it's just like its chest cavity's been opened up into this huge crevasse thing that has this sort of face/mouth, or maybe, I don't even know what it is in there.
These two eyes is all you can really see.
The two glowing yellow eyes.
Yeah. And then the roar of like a monster.
Yeah. Like a mammoth roar. That's what it reminds me of.
Very much. Something
with the
like
huge like bones sticking out of its back. Like I loved, that was one of my favorite visuals, was the scene where Phil ends up burning the entire, or sorry, I always, he looks like a Phil to me. Anyway, Luke, he burns down the whole village, and you just get that shot of the creature slowly in front, just like mourning the loss of everything inside. Because like, I'm not sure how those other creature things.
Well, that's just it. There was other paranormal aspects that didn't fully get played out, but like, I don't think that's a bad thing. But yeah, Luke burns down the building by lighting on fire these straw body-like things. Yeah.
They're like half straw and half other stuff though. Like they actually almost look like shrunken heads. You know what I'm thinking too? Because there's there's a lot of chanting that Luke hears from the other room where he's imprisoned. And it sounds, oh shoot, I actually had it written down what it sounded like. It's,
Can you find it there?
I don't know if I can find it, but it's like this, bow to Uton. Bow to Uton is the, in a demonic sort of, phrase, like, you know, it sounds like they're all under demonic, like
like a trance of some kind.
But that, what if those dummy things were a part of the ceremony,
right?
Of like the preparing of the sacrificial offering,
and that's why they were almost like in between, like alive and dead, like when Luke's in there and there's like movement.
Yeah,
because obviously they're like where they're located in this forest is like, messed up.
Are those the like previous humans that are so ancient that's the state that they've become?
And okay, that's another that's interesting.
Yeah, lots of possibilities.
That's a crazy way.
Another thing too that I have a question about. Sorry, we're like we're just like, I love this movie so much, but it's so much to talk about. Why did they have to like prepare Dom? Like they take him out, they beat him up, they scare the shit out of him, like, and have this whole ceremony, but then he comes back. Yeah, you don't know what they've done to him. It's like clearly you'd think there would be some sort of a cleansing or something, but really they're just kind of beat up on him. They literally, like, he comes back with like two black eyes, and he's all like kind of bloody, and that was kind of strange. I guess if I had bones to pick with this movie, that would maybe be one of them. Mm-hmm. It didn't get played out any more than that. And also, I just thought it actually three things. Mm-hmm. I also thought it would have been more effective if the young blonde girl who knows a few English words really only knew a few English words. You made that comment, and you're like, does she have like Rosetta Stone or something? Well, it's just like that. This happens all the time. This happens all the time in Hollywood movies, right? Like where it's horror, and then you're supposed to, you're not supposed to be speaking English, and next thing you know, you're having a full conversation with somebody in a German castle or something weird like that, right? Yeah. I thought it would have been way more effective if she did know a couple of words, but she would have just said, like, kneeled down to him and just been like,
God, ancient, Jotun, or something. Like, just 3 words. You know what I mean? And then, like, he can kind of surmise from there, like, what he's dealing with, instead of her describing it all to him in full.
Okay, because you sort of picked up on something that I didn't. You thought that she said at the very end of that exchange that it's the bastard son of Loki.
I swear that's what she said. And we forgot, we watched it twice and we never went back the third time to triple check that.
Because I
am 99.99% sure that's how she describes this thing. That it's a god, ancient, one of the Jotun, bastard son of Loki. Which, of course, is the trickster deity of Norse mythology.
With questionable origins, apparently. I thought he was Thor's brother, but they just made him into his brother for the Hollywood story.
Yeah. It's so funny, too. Like, we go to Google around for some stuff, about the film itself, and also just looking into, like, the Jotun and things like that. And it's like, you type in Jotun and Loki, you got to dig deep to find anything that's not Marvel
and
related.
It's not.
It's like
I actually ended up looking up the spelling Utin as opposed to like Jotan, like Jotunn, and let's just say it's a euphemism for a male body part.
Oh, not the same thing.
Yeah, no, right. I didn't know that.
Yeah, no phallic objects were getting these guys out of this situation here. That's for sure.
No.
I guess. Did you have any other thoughts on this that you thought like you wanted to bring up, like favorite moments or anything like that?
We touched on a lot of.
We did.
I honestly, the cinematography I thought was excellent. I really liked the way that the woods were shot. It definitely had this pervasive sense of just doom and terror. Yeah. And it was very, what's the word I'm looking for? It was very, just like straight across the board. Like it was the same the whole time. Right. Okay. It was consistent. Yes. Yeah, it was consistent and it was building. And they did that effectively through, like I said, like the music, the film, soundtrack.
The only thing I think maybe they could have added a few more audio effects for were the moments where like those scenes you described at the beginning where the camera angle was like just straight on the really dense trees and then it's the 4 of them kind of coming through the trees. Maybe they could have had almost like the witch-esque not wailing,
that old
but
woman?
like the something really something unsettling from that angle because there was nothing in that scene. It was just the woods, which I think is effective too. Also, I thought it would have been effective to use that when Phil is kind of peeking out the door when they're in the cabin that first night. He's like, I swear I heard something out there. And they're like, oh yeah, we're not the only... Hodge is like, oh, we're not the only animals in the wood, Lukey, or whatever. And he's just looking at him. It's like, that was not an animal. No. He's peeking out the window and all it is just the rain.
Right.
I feel like it would have been effective to have the rain and also like the like that kind of underlying wailing. We did just watch The Witch recently, so I'm totally biased with that wailing, ominous sounds. It's like awesome.
Okay, the one other thing I would have wanted added was at the very, very beginning, before even the pub scene where all the friends got together. I thought it would have been a really good idea to have a sort of a grounding scene of Luke's character. The way that I see it in my head is like he could have woken up that morning, looks over groggily at the alarm clock, which never went off or something because he doesn't have a job to go through. Like, like maybe something to kind of implicate him as like not as responsible or as together as the rest of his friends. And then perhaps like maybe he's even waking up to the fact that he's getting like a voicemail or something, like reminding him to meet his friends at the pub. Like, you know what I mean? Like something to kind of allude to the fact that he doesn't really have his shit together. And like even if you just saw his living arrangements where it's like, oh, like maybe it's like a bachelor pad where it's not really, it's kind of, it's not the nicest place or it's not the neatest place or there's no presence of a woman or a child. Like, like there's no family or anything yet. Like he's still kind of like in those sort of years of like the formative years, right? Where he's still trying to figure himself out kind of thing, as opposed to where everyone else in his crew is together and has families, kids, wives, that type of thing.
I could see that. I could agree with that. Yeah.
I think it's not necessary though. But I'm just saying like that could have been a potential deleted scene. Something to kind of add more to the fact that he is the central character.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm certainly. I mean, he had to be the one that makes it out. Obviously. True. Did you like the ending?
Yes, I did really like the ending. I thought it was very well done. The way they went from start to finish, where you see Rob on the ground, face down, dying, in the very initial scenes in the movie. And then at the very end, you see the exact same imagery with Luke on the ground with the beast on his head, right? Forcing him down to kneel.
To worship.
Exactly. Yeah. And I thought that was so brilliant, the way that he kind of looks over and sees the vision of his friend dying exactly the way he's positioned, but then right in front is the blade, whatever, the hatchet or whatever it was.
Which we were talking about the other day. We're like, he wasn't carrying that. That was just very conveniently placed. And my rationale for that was like, oh, well, they were cutting those little, niches in the stumps so they could light them on fire for their freaky deaky pathway kind of thing. And maybe it got left out there, right place, right time. The cool thing about that scene was like, it showed that this creature they're dealing with is in between God and
moral
and something, a physical entity that
we didn't
can
see
be
it
harmed.
bleed, but we saw it
but it squealed and and it was clearly perturbed. It was injured, moderately or whatever. And then he runs just past the woods and it can't follow him. That I find very interesting and spooky too, because it's like, I mean, do you guys out there listening believe that any places like this can exist? Not where necessarily ancient Norse gods are,
like dead zones or like zones where time stands still or something?
Yeah, like zones where things can exist that can't leave.
Yeah, because that was its perimeter was the edge of the woods. It could not follow him.
I am honestly, I'm down the rabbit hole with Norse mythology after this movie and Inuit mythology and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. There's some really cool things out there, and it's just like the Jotun. I love that word. Yeah. The idea of ancient gods being real is just the coolest thing in the world to me. It's very Cthulhu.
Definitely.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
If I had to think of one similar creature to the monster that because it was an amalgamation. Like when we looked into it, it's like when they were coming up with what they wanted this monster to be, it was kind of a hodgepodge. But if you guys have never heard of this creature called the Idrak, it's like a monster / creature of Inuit mythology. Very similar though, like elk legs, something on all fours, but that also has like the arms of a human. Super creepy, man. Super creepy. But I honestly, like, lots of people kind of were iffy about this movie. Like some people loved it, some people didn't. Honestly, like I'm giving it a 5-star. Like I loved it. It's in my top 5 favorite thriller / horror movies I've ever seen in my life.
Wow. Okay. I don't know if I give it like 5 out of 5, but it's
4.9.
It's like, I'll give it an A.
Sure.
Or I'll give it an A-.
84%?
84, no. I'd give it like a 90, I don't know. But no, yeah, I honestly, I'd recommend it to people that love a good scare and love a good, like, creature. Like, you know what I mean? It goes beyond just the horror and more just into the supernatural.
Ancient supernatural things, man, is the coolest thing in the world.
Gets the wheels turning in the old brain here.
Yeah.
So that's our take.
That's our take on the ritual. Let us know what you guys think. Let us know what you think about the idea of, I don't know, maybe some of these things being based on possible truth. This is Into the Portal, so we always like to explore those rabbit holes. And I believe that there's definitely things out there that we can't explain, obviously. Whether or not it's ancient gods or not, I don't know.
Yeah.
Hopefully there's some listeners from Sweden that can...
You can reach out to us with your take on this movie at intotheportalmailbox@gmail.com. Reach out to us on our socials. We're active on Twitter. We've got a Facebook forum group that's really active and really fun.
Super fun.
Obviously, Instagram's up there as well, Into the Portal Podcast. So, yeah, come check us out. Join in, and we'd love to hear from you.
Absolutely. And do we know what we're doing next week for our film? Or will we announce that later?
Actually, we are hoping to do Hereditary.
Okay.
Yes.
So I know that one is available on YouTube for rent. And
Toni Collette, man. I love that lady.
Make sure you guys go check out the movie Hereditary and be prepped up for next week. And until Sunday, we'll see you guys then.
a podcast from the Podfix Network. You can check out more shows like it at podfixnetwork.com.